Hello, my mimics, and welcome back to the Mimic Commentary, episode 35. At the end of our last episode, we finished the prophecy painting, and we were awarded with the Warhawk Ashes. The prophecy painting shows kind of the Blackstone civilization stuff, water coming out the side of Limgrave. We see the Chapel of Anticipation closer to the center of this image, and then we see Stormveil. The reward is the Warhawk Ashes. Speaking of the Stormhawks, who were mutilated, most likely by Godric the Grafted. And in the region where we finished that painting, we got the Bewitching Branch, talking about the Empyrean Mikola. Now, part of the prophecy painting, so it's, if you recall, it's at the Church of Pilgrimage, where there's a Radigan statue, and it looks towards this way. The Warhawk Ashes are, obviously insinuating that the prophecy has something to do with Stormveil Castle. We kind of deduced that it's most likely the Chapel of Anticipation, because that's where our Tarnish spawns in, and since we started as a prophet, we have a little bit of insight that the Erd Tree will burn, and that will be part of the, that's the ruinous prophecy. But there is more than one prophecy within Elden Ring. I alluded to that there are a few that I found. And, since we're the prophet class, we can kind of look into the future and determine. If you've watched Scum Mage Infa's videos, I credit him with this discovery. If we look at Stormveil Castle, these gates here, they have a little bit of a, like a dip and a ridge there. This looks very reminiscent of something that we would find later in Elden Ring that has to do with, let's say, the coming of a potential golden god. One of the major prophecies within Elden Ring is this coming of this golden god. We'll see more of this evidence throughout Elden Ring as we keep playing, but here is just one of them. These two gates at the two pillars at the gate of Stormveil, specifically how it arches low at the top there. Very reminiscent of a important structure that we'll find later. This episode, and the reason why we bring that up was because this episode we're going to explore the depths of Stormveil Castle. Now, if you're familiar with the general story, lore, happenings of Elden Ring, then you would be pretty familiar with kind of who this golden god might be. However, because we've seen the end of Elden Ring, as prophets, we know how this story goes. The people of the lands between have not. So we should consider, without having accurate information on what exactly, someone might be seeing within a prophecy, how they could be confused at what the outcome would be, if that makes sense. I want us to consider, let's say their prophecy exists. We know that prophecy exists within Elden Ring. Oh, I should probably take out my sword. We know prophecy exists in Elden Ring, so I think it's safe to assume that... Oh, geez Louise. You really rocked my socks. I'm trying to be a little coy without, giving too much information. If prophecy exists in Elden Ring, we should consider that all of the events that happen, canonically within the story, and when I say canonically, the things that are unchangeable, the things that will always be within Elden Ring. So, for example, no matter what, Godwyn the Golden is always going to die in the Night of the Black Knives. There's no way to prevent it. The Erd Tree, in order to complete Elden Ring, has to burn. So no matter what, the Erd Tree will always burn. Before the game starts, Godwyn the Golden is always going to die. And the very end of Shadow of the Erd Tree, you know, our little prophetic power coming in. At the very end of Shadow of the Erd Tree, we know that, you know, some characters will attain their goals and transformations because of our tarnished actions. All right, those things are unavoidable. So, since those things are canonically supposed to happen and will always happen within the story, I think it's safe to assume that they could be prophesized. Okay, and I want to invite you all to consider how, you know, having a general idea of how the story will end could lead to, you know, some misunderstandings on what exactly is coming within the future. So I hope that all makes sense. You know, one of the biggest red herrings essentially for Elden Ring is the curious case of Godwyn the Golden. You know, a lot of speculation before the DLC. Where would his story take him? And you know, we pretty much know how his story ends, with a few extra details in Shadow of the Erd Tree. But that's kind of, you know, I'm going to allude to that's kind of the nature of prophecy. And hopefully we'll see some of that throughout this episode. But coming over here, we actually have some dialogue. So give me a moment to grab my text dump just so I could be ready to reread this stuff.
Be proud. You were a fine warrior. Your only mistake was your choice of master. Let the winds lift you to a higher place.
All right. This woman here is wearing the hero's attire from the starting class. We haven't done an episode where we go over the starting classes yet, but just from memory, just from prophetic power, we know this is tied to Badland warriors. Interesting things to note about her armor, made of fur. She has a chained belt, but I think the most interesting thing is kind of this red draped down on her waist. Kind of looks like red hair, actually, if we look close to that. Yeah, it looks like red hair. And, you know, we consider the significance of red hair throughout Elden Ring, which, you know, so far the only red hair that we've seen so far has been the statue of Radigan found at the Church of Pilgrimage and the Leonine Misbegotten at the Moan grave. So I ask you to consider what would be the connection. You know, as a warrior, is she hunting red hair, you know, beasts like a Leonine Misbegotten? You know, what type of talisman is this supposed to be? What significance would this have for a warrior? She says, "Be proud, you are a fine warrior," speaking to this banished knight, a worshiper of the ancient dragons and partitioner of storm magic. "Your only mistake was a choice in master." So, obviously, she's disagreeing with him for allying himself with Godric. "Let the winds lift you to a higher place." You know, that kind of gives me some, like, religiosity, maybe a heaven state that they believe in, that the storm would lift them to a heaven-like state, a heaven-like plane. And it's interesting that this warrior, the hero class, we have ties to using axes, Horaloo, the chieftain of the Badlands, who might be Godfrey. Godfrey might have become Horaloo based on the evidence that we have so far. So we have kind of a connection between, I guess, the storm. She has some storm affiliation, but we're getting a little crossover with the dragons. You know, she doesn't seem to be very dragoned up. Let's give her a chat.
Well, who do we have here? Tarnished, are you? Clearly not one of Godric's lot. I am Nepheli Loux. Tarnished and warrior, like you. I'm here by decree of my father. How utterly repellent this is. This grafting of Godric's ill befits a lord. He's tainted the very winds.
Okay. She's also tarnished, just like us, but she says she's a warrior. Nepheli Loux. We have Horaloo. You know, our first instinct, if she's Nepheli Loux, and she's at the behest of her father. Her father must be Horaloo. We're going to get a little indication on who her father actually is, but, we'll learn that it's her adoptive father. So her paternal father might be this Horaloo character, and that might mean she is a child of Godfrey. So, not golden lineage, though. If a child of Horaloo, if a child of Godfrey, she would not be part of the golden lineage because the golden lineage is supposed to be the marriage of the beast and the tree of Godfrey and Marika. But she's a Loux. What else she says? She's here to grieve her father. We should, our first choice of option, who is her father? Well, her name's Nepheli Loux. Her father must be Horaloo, so we think Horaloo. Is she here because of Horaloo? Most likely not. We're going to learn who that is. She finds that the grafting of Godric is ill befits a lord and it's repellent and it's tainted the very winds. The winds are now tainted. His actions, I don't think the winds are literally tainted because he's doing the grafting. We've had some on the molting. Some wooden shield of Stormveil soldiers, much like the castle, it is marred by mottling and thorns. Some say it is the curse of grafting which causes such affliction. So this is kind of in line with Nepheli's belief that the grafting is also tainting the winds. The grafting is causing these thorns to come through. While others talk of its root, we think roots, the roots of something, being something altogether more sinister, hidden deep within the castle. So that's where we're going. And we also want to remember that thorns are tied to the briars of sin and having people's eyes crushed out.
If you intend to challenge Godric, I ask you call upon me. The winds run foul with his deeds. I'm certain father would permit me aid the fight.
Okay.
Apologies, but I've idled long enough. As fellow Tarnished, we must each follow our own guidance, down whatever road takes us to the throne of Elden Lord.
Our guidance is the guidance of grace and foresight. And it looks like a seed landed here. Now, is this a seed that just landed here because it fell from the Erd tree, or did it land here because someone was trying to plant this within Stormveil? And here we go. We have a Trina Lily inviting us to look, watch, and I think the thing. Oh, you know what? Let's look here. This is something I was alluding to before. The statues that are what we are prescribing to being, for lack of a better term right now, they're the saint statues, but we're going to call them the hooded Radagon statues. And one of the reasons I deduce that these statues are Radagon, because they're defaced in Stormveil Castle, specifically towards the entrance for Godric. We're going to find more of these statues later, but we could see that these hooded statues, we know they're all the same because this one's holding the book, and they've been defaced. This one has also been defaced. Let's see if we can see that better angle without getting too close. Yeah, the hands have been removed, and the head has been removed. This one has been completely destroyed. We found these statues at the church within Stormveil. So what we need to do here is we need to get our friend to wake up because he's going to get us some smithing stones. Oh gosh, he is so menacing. They really picked, like, the perfect size for these enemies. Come on, buddy. Can he hit him? Oh, they do damage to each other. We like that. But I don't know if they'll ultimately be antagonistic to each other. There we go. Oh no. I didn't think that would hit me. Nice. We like that. Don't like that, though. I think our reward, if I have to remember, I think it's smithing stones too, so let's find out. 5 1s and a 2. Okay. Bows and arrows are cool. What do we got over here? Likely misfortune. More smithing stones, nice. Anything interesting here? We get some more of these kind of Erd Tree Knights. We get the beast imagery, Sirach, and actually this is kind of interesting. I don't know if we've seen this before, but we kind of have like, I don't know, like horse head, llama heads or something. I'm seeing llamas. We have some sort of animal or beast coming out of this floral design, and then the lion on the top. And then towards the very top, we have 2 lions, and then the tree imagery, and then 2 more beasts kind of spiraling out of there. And that's kind of very interesting that we see this stuff kind of raised on top of the walls. That usually leads me to believe that these were added afterwards. Since this is very storm focused, this is very dragon focused. We have our Stormhawk entering over here. Straight ahead we have Godric, but first we're investigating the depths of the castle. Can we level up? How much faith do we need to use the Godslayer? So 27, holy moly. I kind of want to give us... Gosh. All right, I'll just give us 1 vitality or vigor or whatever it is. All right, Stormcaller, nice. This Asheward grants the armament, quality, affinity, yada yada. Stormcaller, one of the skills that channels the Tempest of Stormveil. Swinging around, bring up a sword, the Tempest of Stormveil. Found in an ash, so someone must have died here with that Ash of War. I think our right way to go is, obviously we have to get up there from that direction, but I think that's the best way for us to go. Here we have some of our living jars. This is the first time we've seen a living jar outside of Alexander. Now, these guys aren't, I don't think these are warrior jars because they're so small. Are they hostile? He's hostile. And here's a warrior jar. Now, since these guys are so small, who could be inside of them? We know this one is a warrior. From Alexander, we learn that, all of these warriors are put into the jars and they kind of become a single, entity. Their hopes and dreams and yada yada all coalesce into one being. Oh, we get some more information on them. So, raw meat dumpling, most likely human flesh. A pungent raw meatball made succulent by virtue of being on the verge of turning. That is so gross. Not recommended for those who prefer to know the origin of their meats. Restores HP but also poisons the user. Yeah, eating raw human flesh will do that. A fragment of a living jar hardened after its death. So the jar is alive, living jar, and then when it dies, its shard will harden. Such fragments command a high price due to the magical power locked within. This leaves the living jars unfortunate targets for poachers. Now, why are the jars magical? Could it be the flesh that is inside of them? Is the people who are chosen for being placed into these jars and eventually come to life, do they have some magical properties to their flesh that allow it to live after dying? And I'm doing the poaching, and I should feel bad. Hiding with the crackpots? Cool. So I think that's, I think we'll get more answers with that when we delve deep into, what do you call it? Oh, actually, into Shadow of the Erd Tree. But here, there's the statues talking about before. I guess all defaced. It's interesting that only those statues are defaced, but the libation ones aren't. I would think that they're both America. And they could both be America, but maybe people don't know they're both America. That's just one thought I have. Where does this lead us? I don't remember. We know from the grafted scions and members of the golden lineage who... Oh, here we go. This is good. I guess we don't really need this, that grace. But we know where we're going. You know, there is some special property to the flesh of the golden lineage, as we've seen with the grafted scions. So perhaps the people who are given jar burial, specifically to feed the Erd Tree or become warriors. No, it seems to be feeding the Erd Tree. I wonder why... Oh, you know, it makes sense. I'm thinking, why would Godric have these jars here? What goal does he have for having the jars? But since his interest is in grafting, you know, he would want to pursue every type of every type of flesh and meat he could find for his goals. So, you know, it's not too odd that he would have the jars here. You know, maybe they're a good compounding material for someone who is trying to do some grafting. I think that is the way forward where we have to go find more stuff, but we kind of want to jump down here because we have something interesting. So before we push forward, we have a banished knight in kind of sort of like prayer or reverence to a storm or a warhawk with a warhawk next to him. So we see, I think, a pretty clear cultural significance, not just because of the, you know, these people are dragon worshippers, yet how they mourn the hawks, and the hawk is involved as well. You know, this shows some type of intelligence amongst the beasts and men, and we are going to fight them. Woo! Oh, geez. Woo! Oh, he's got Dragon Communion, too. I didn't know that guy could cast Dragon Communion. Very interesting that he has Dragon Communion, too. Oh, nice. The Banished Knight Greatsword. Finally crafted greatsword, intrinsically engraved with an ancient motif. Ancient. It's old. This is old. Let's look at it. Given to knights who... I think it's the same. No, we've read this before. Given to knights who, whether by misfortune or misdeeds, were forced to abandon their homes. Most of these knights were sent to the fringes, where they were forced to start anew, with only despair for company. I think that's actually... I think that's new. Is that... Yeah, that's interesting. Let's read that again. Given to knights who, whether by misfortune or misdeed, were forced to abandon their homes. Most of these knights were sent to the fringes, where they were forced to start anew, with only despair for company. This is the fringes. So, you know, maybe they were closer to the tree. Let's look at these ancient motifs on here. What are the ancient motifs? I'm seeing flowers on here, kind of plants. Yeah, at the pommel, there's a flower. We see the shield. It's interesting that that's, you know, how ancient is the motifs of, you know, plants and trees. Even though this is, I think we're not in the age, I don't think we're in the age of the Erd Tree anymore, just based off of memory. I don't know if that's considered ancient. As a Banished Knight sword, this is like one of the nicer swords. It has a different moveset. And it's a pretty good moveset. I think this is a sweep too. Unfortunately, though, we're going to stick it to the Claymore. With only despair for company. Yeah, that's quite sad. You know, we I didn't know we can... yeah. You know, we have to consider... Although these are, you know, all trained killers and warriors, there is a loss of their culture beat through conquest. Although that they most likely come from another culture that also participated in conquests and killing and, you know, the eradication of other people's cultures and the taking away of their homes. it kind of like shows this cycle of violence that never stops. And there is that kind of longing, I think, for trying to understand these lost cultures within these fantasies, but, you know, in the real world as well. One of our Trina lilies. Trina, what are we trying to see here? Saint Trina, what's going on here? I don't know. Maybe the jars? Maybe the jars? Sweet dreams? I don't know why. That's a weird spot for a Trina lily. It's a weird spot for the Trina lily. Maybe the Trina lily is there to say that we're going in the right direction? Could be. What's up, buddy? Oops. Yeah, they're just taking the snooze. You really gotta feel bad for these guys. They got nothing to do. They can't die. There's no entertainment. You know, this is like some type of purgatory for them until we rest at a grace, and then they just have to get back up and do it again. Manor Tower Shield. Ooh, hoo, hoo. Interesting that we found this here. Is there anything else that could tie us to the manor before we look at these? No. Okay. So actually, there is stuff that... So let's just look at this. We have... let me actually swap this shield so we can look back and forth. Oop. So we have our Sun Realm shield showing the seat of the sun, where the sun sits. And then we have the Manor Tower shield. You know, it still has that same Norman design for the castles. This one is a little more... this one's a little more pointy. The seat of the sun may literally be the gates of Stormveil. Like, you know, could be the gates of Stormveil. This could be the two towers, if you look on the left, the two towers in the front of the castle, and then the tower in the middle could be this one in Godric's arena. So if we kind of look at, you know, you see the two towers right there at the gates of Stormveil, and then behind it is their one tower. So that could be, you know, the Sun Realm Shield could be showing Stormveil as the seat of the sun. Watch Infa's video. I think he shows that the sun sits directly between them. But the Manor Tower Shield, we have the Beast Sirach on the front of the manor, and it's got that Norman castle design, emblematic of the Sun Realm buildings. And then towards the top, man with shield, man with bow, man empty-handed. So obviously a castle fortified for war, and a manor fortified for war. An iron great shield large enough to cover the entire body depicts the Round Table Hold, gathering place of champions. So it's interesting that we're finding artifacts of the Round Table Hold here in Stormveil. We know that there's Banished Knight material in the Round Table Hold. But this is where I was kind of getting at that Roderica might be a little bit confused when she says that the Round Table Hold is the gathering place of champions, where while, yes, it is, she might not be at the correct one. But it's interesting that we have that connection here. So we're definitely getting the manor, the fortified manor, the Round Table Hold. Does it say fortified manor actually, or does it just say Manor Tower Shield? It didn't say fortified manor. Forget I said that word. The Round Table Hold has a connection to Stormveil, and I think we already gathered that through the iconography found in there. This is the tower I was talking about on the Sun Realm Shield. The tower right there, that could be the tower in the very middle of the shield where the sun sits, and then the two towers on the sides could be the gates. An O for... Ooh. Is that loaded in? Oh, yeah, it is. Church. Wizard Tower. We'll get there one day. This is an indicator of an NPC message. Surely what you seek is somewhere close by. Thank you, Roger. So Roger went this way. Better view of Chapel of Anticipation. This is where we fell for our death with the butterflies. There is America. See America there too, and that Erd Tree Knight. I don't think these. It's interesting how they get over there. I don't think these are ever connected. You know, seeing that we have those old paintings, these places were disconnected before the castles were created. So some of these things, maybe we shouldn't think too hard on them. Okay, we already have golden rune 5s. Here's the painting. This is the easiest one to see. You know, this is what I'm saying. This area is disconnected from the mainland, yet they're able to build and get materials over there. We may have an answer to that, but you know, it's some of those things that you don't really have to think too hard about. But it is interesting that this painting is showing the Divine Tower, the bridge to the Divine Tower. We don't know it's a Divine Tower yet, but you know, we know it is. And missing Stormveil. You know, kind of part of that prophecy. This castle is relevant, or this area is relevant for some prophecy. That's why it's depicted in a painting. And then we get our prophecy painting showing the same thing. See? You know, it's kind of like a 1-for-1, I think. Look at that. The secrets of Stormveil Castle are almost ours. Got bats. Oh, so excited. So excited to get down there. I don't know what I'm going to say yet. Arteria leaves. Warriors love that. I don't know. I don't think there's much we can glean from these things. Maybe just a casual chat while we get down there. I started working on a script for non-Elden Ring content on my other channel. I want to do kind of like literary or like movie analysis on things. The first movie that we're gonna do, maybe it'll be a surprise, but I kind of want to expand out from just doing Elden Ring stuff and Fromsoft stuff and all that jazz, and you know, talk about other things. When that video comes out and that like stuff is ready, you know, I'll post it on here and you can watch it if you like. But that's what I've been working on. I haven't started editing chapter 2 yet. It's just like, I don't know, feels like such a burden. So this is kind of what I was alluding to, where we were going to find more of these statues. To me, these statues feel like they were thrown down here. They were destroyed. They were literally defaced and thrown down here. Specifically, these statues of the woman in libation, these do not look like they're thrown down here. They look like they've always been here. But the hooded statues of this man with the sword and the book were thrown down here. Why would Godric, presumably, have these statues defaced? Why would he have them destroyed? Using our little prophetic power, a little prophetic wisdom, if these are in fact statues of Radagon, you know, the Golden Lineage are the dregs of the Golden Lineage. They don't have power anymore. Presumably, the Elden Lord Radagon, or the King Consort Radagon, with an Elden Rune. Presumably, he's the one in power right now. And the presumed heir to the disgraced Godfrey, would not approve of these statues being all over the place, so we destroy them. That's how I see it, and I think this is this area here is one of the prime pieces of evidence that these statues are depicting Radagon. Again, we're using a little bit of our prophetic wisdom to deduce that. I think you would need to. I think after doing like New Game Plus and getting some specific items, would we figure that out? This is a different looking dung beetle. It's purple. Let's be quiet on it so I can actually get it. And it's purple, right? It's purple. It's purple because it has a spell, specifically Rancor Call. Sorcery of the Servants of Death. Servants of Death, capital D, death as a concept or a thing. Summons vengeful spirits that chase down foes. Our other vengeful spirit creation is our Rancor Pot, which is created from bone shards and grave violet. Spawns vengeful spirits that chase down foes. Essentially, this is the spell turned into a pot. In times of old, the dead were burned in ghost flame, and from those cinders arose vengeful spirits. They don't like being burned. They're getting vengeful. Once thought lost, this ancient death hex was rediscovered by the necromancer Garrus. Now, what's interesting here, we get this necromancer Garrus character mentioned. However, I don't think this is saying that the spell that we picked up was Garrus, like this spell here. This isn't where Garrus discovered it. If we recall, like Ashes of War are memories of battle, and if we look at our Golden Scarab more directly on ahead, these scarab roll clumps of incantations during their labors. As a scarab approaches death, it abandons its royal treasure and stretches its wings wide for its long journey to its home nest. If we assume that Ashes of War being placed in places are supposed to tell us where someone had died, and those are their memories kind of like turning into a physical thing, into ash, I think we could say the same thing for incantations and spells. This one is not an incantation, it is a sorcery. It needs intelligence. So there is, and it's faith too. So there is this spirituality tied to these religious beliefs involving death, but there is a science to it. It's not something that you just pray to and believe in through your faith, but it is something that we could measure and deduce. It's a tangible thing that is very knowable. Death is a tangible thing that is knowable. Garrus rediscovers it. However, since we find it here, it looks like, death worshippers, specifically probably, like those who live in death and those who live in death. Where am I going at? Let me re-get my thoughts. Let me get my thoughts again. Death worshippers, or those who follow these ancient death rites and death hexes, are tied to Stormveil. So the Banished Knights, ancient dragons, what have you. Before we jump down, see a lot of death here, rotting rats, corpses in these what look like boats. And we have the Tibia Mariners who summon those who live in death. And they're kind of like supposed to be like Charon on the River Styx. But these look very old. These look like, gosh, what do we think these are? Maybe like hollowed out tree bark, or maybe like the shell of an animal. There's water here, so although this is like a chasm that's like ripped deep and we see the roots coming through, it looks like this has been, and it's a little destroyed. This has been a mainstay of the castle for some time. Then we have Ghost Flame, the death being burned in Ghost Flame. And yeah, let's go. We know it's down here. An ulcerated tree spirit. So the tree, the spirit of the tree ate something bad. Oh, geez. Woo. I knew that was going to happen. I was getting a little too greedy. Little too greedy. Yeah, a little too greedy. All right. We'll be back down here in just a second. We're not going to be able to pick up my runes because I fell twice trying to get back here. Oh, jeez. I think we're just getting too greedy with the fireballs. There we go. All right, sorry for no commentary of fighting him. You know, our stats are like pretty rough. Yeah, dropping us our golden seed. Probably, you know, I'm thinking that ulcerated tree spirit. It's a spirit born from the golden seed of the Erd tree, and it's ulcerated because it's got some bad stuff in its tummy. Stone sword key, throwing daggers. All right. Now, what could it have in its tummy that is so nasty and rotten? What is this curse at the bottom of Stormveil Castle? Ooh, this is gross. It is a octopus squidman face. Thorns coming from it. It's got freaking suckers, like octopus suckers, but we could see the thorns coming through it. Ugh, nasty. And over here, this blood stain. Our friend Roger, the friendly sorcerer, dying somehow. And next to this thing, the Prince of Death's pustule. You could see kind of eyes and a nose. You could actually see 1, 2, 3, 4 faces in there. A fetid pustule, a rotten pustule, taken from facial flesh. So this Prince of Death's pustule came from this thing. It is said that the pustule came from the visage of the Prince of Death, he who used to be called Godwyn. As first dead of the demigods, it is said he's buried deep under the capital, at the Erd tree's roots. Okay, so this isn't Godwyn, but this is his visage, so it's his face in some way. However, and it's also facial flesh. Ooh, look at that, and it bleeds. Kind of a nose. I think there's some talk that this might actually be upside down a bit. You'll have to figure that out. But let's break this down. Let's kind of look at this. So it raises vitality. Vitality raises the resistance of the effects of death. We could see Godwyn's face popping up everywhere here. We also found eyes with... we found eyes in catacombs that had death there, and there was death root. I mean, there's death root on there. What is the... Vitality governs the resistance to the effects of death, and if we look at Death Root, on the night of the dire plot, the stolen rune of death enabled the first death of a demigod. Later, the rune of death spread across the lands between, through the underground roots of the Great Tree, sprouting in the forms of Death Root. So we have Godwyn dies in the Night of the Black Knives from the stolen rune of death. As the first dead of the demigods, he is buried deep under the capital at the Erd Tree's roots. So Godwyn is killed, and then he's buried in the Erd Tree roots. After he's buried into the Erd Tree roots, the rune of death spreads across the lands between through the underground roots of the Great Tree, sprouting in the form of Death Root. So because Godwyn was killed and then buried at the Erd Tree's roots, Death Root begins spreading, and so does Godwyn's faces, as seen on the Prince of Death's pustule. We can see the faces, and here, this isn't really Godwyn's face. It just looks like it. It's just his visage. We can actually see that his body is coming through. Here's his arm. Here's almost an entire torso breaking through the ground. So Godwyn is essentially growing. This death is growing throughout the lands between. It's sprouting in the forms of Deathroot, sprouting in the form of Godwyn's Visage. And I opened up this episode talking about prophecy. Specifically, what happens at the end of Shadow of the Erd Tree. We see a golden, this is Godwyn the Golden. We see the rebirth of a golden god. Could we say the same for, Godwyn? Godwyn, what does this say? It is said that the pustule came from the visage of the Prince of Death, he who used to be called Godwyn. So he was Godwyn, now he's the Prince of Death. No longer is he Godwyn, now he's the Prince of Death. He's changed. We could say he's been reborn in some way. We could say. And I just, when it comes to prophecy, Stormveil Castle has a lot of imagery that is relevant to what actually, like, the big reveals and the big changes and where things happen, the big movers and shakers in the world. It's just very interesting that we find Godwyn's growth happening here. And we also have these towers right there, and that tower back here, Godwyn the Golden, And when we look at the prophecy painting, near the prophecy painting was Miquella's bewitching branches. So, that's like super foreshadowing. It'll be stuff we'll talk about in chapter 2 when that gets made. Also, very aquatic here. We have a better view of this thing. Very creepy. We have the part of the death rituals. Other than burning and ghost flame, there are the water burials, the coffin burials, and this connection between death and the aquatic. We could liken back to in Bloodborne, the Great Ones. Their language is tied to the sound of running water. Or just water in general, if we think of the runes such as Lake and Deep Sea and Great Lake and things like that. The research hall in the Hunter's Nightmare is listening to water. And then in Dark Souls 3, the deep is seen, I think, as an ocean where souls kind of like fall to the depths to. So there is a lot of, death and water and the oceans being tied together. So it would make sense that the Prince of Death has this ghastly aquatic form. Godwyn is not looking too hot here. But we found the source of our mottling and our thorns. If we kind of tie it back to... We have... let's look... Where's the red thorn shield? Its emblem is an ancient thorn design, boosts fire damage negation, the briars of sin, before being reborn in these lands. When we also talk about the nature of prophecy, symbols, ancient symbols, like this ancient thorn design, they could be ancient because, let's say someone has a prophetic vision into the future and they see that thorns are going to be relevant to whatever it is, burning of the Erd Tree maybe, or the rebirth of a god. Thorns are relevant. So they put that in their iconography. Since we know that Elden Ring operates with prophecy as part of its way of world design, narrative building, and story, we have to consider that the events that happen in the future influence the beliefs of the past. It's a non-linear way of thinking and looking at the world, but it's how these worlds are created and how they're built. Miyazaki has been using prophecy since Dark Souls 1. I don't think there's prophecy in Demon Souls, but prophecy has existed since Dark Souls 1. And it's rather important for understanding why the worlds get built in the way that they do if there are groups of people who are trying to either prevent things from happening, make sure things happen, unknowing, not knowing that they are actively enacting a prophecy when they're trying to prevent it, things like that. Everything, when you have a story that has prophecy, you're essentially looking at kind of like, oh, I didn't even notice. There's more Radigan statues here. Holy crap, this guy's everywhere. When you have a story that has prophecy in it, you have a lot of you have determinism where the actions of the characters usually don't have much bearing or weight because their actions are already predetermined by the prophecy, by the future. Fortunately, with how George R. R. Martin writes his stories, it doesn't really pan out that way. He uses prophecy, I think, very effectively. And I'm just going to read you a quote that he has about prophecy before we end this episode. Here's the full quote. Prophecies are a double-edged sword. You have to handle them very carefully. They can add depth and interest to a book, but you don't want to be too literal or too easy. In the War of the Roses, there was one lord who had been prophesied he would die beneath the walls of a certain castle, and he was superstitious at that sort of walls, so he never came anywhere near that castle. He stayed thousands of leagues away from that particular castle because of the prophecy. However, he was killed in the first battle of St. Paul de Vency. St. Paul de Vency? I think that's, I don't know. And when they found him dead, he was outside of an inn whose sign was the picture of that castle. So, that's the way prophecies come true in unexpected ways. The more you try to avoid them, the more you're making them true. And I make a little fun with that. So that's kind of how I want us to picture prophecies within Elden Ring and how characters could inadvertently making prophecies come true without their knowledge. And I think we'll see that more with Godwyn the Golden when we parallel him to another golden child who actually has a triumphant rebirth, so to say, who is very connected to towers that look like this, who kind of dies and comes back. The Godwyn's story is tragic, as we'll see, because it's not unique. It's essentially running. It's running by a playbook, yet he was not the star. He's not. He was running. He was going by a playbook, but it wasn't for him. So that's that episode. Our next episode is going to be our Godric the Golden episode. Or Godric the Grafted. Godric the Golden, Godric the Grafted, whatever. In that episode, we're going to fight him. We're going to do the Divine Tower. We're going to get the Great Rune, and then we're going to do Round Table Hold stuff. Afterwards, after Godric, we're going to go down the well. I don't know if you guys are interested in Down the Well. There's a lot of stuff down there. That's going to be a multi-part saga. After we finish Down the Well, we could do this. No, we won't do the Sending Gate yet. After we go down the well, I guess it's Liurnia. So yeah, there we go. We have a lot of stuff to do. All right. Hope you guys enjoyed this episode. You know the drill. Let's do the thing.